A struggling delivery girl steps into a billionaire's mansion, but what he offers her next could change her life forever. Before we begin this story, where are you watching from? Comment below and enjoy. Rain poured heavily over the city, soaking everything in sight. Maya clutched the warm food bag close to her chest, her jacket already drenched as she jogged up the long, winding driveway. Her cheap sneakers squished with every step, but she didn't care. This delivery paid double. Her manager said it was to a rich estate on the hill, some big mansion nobody ever went near. She figured it was just another stuck-up millionaire too lazy to cook. Maya reached the massive gate and pressed the bell. She expected a security guard or maybe a maid to come out. Instead, the gate slowly opened on its own. Her eyes widened. The mansion ahead looked like something out of a movie. Grand white pillars, glowing lights, trimmed gardens even in the rain. She hesitated, then stepped through the gate, the driveway stretching endlessly under her tired feet. By the time she reached the door, she was shivering. She rang the bell, her hand trembling slightly. Moments later, the door opened and there he was. A tall man, maybe in his early 40s, stood in a black turtleneck and slacks. His icy blue eyes studied her quietly, but there was no arrogance in his face, just calm, powerfully calm. "You look cold," he said simply. "Come in." Maya blinked. "I just came to deliver your food, sir." "And you've done that. Now come in," he repeated. She hesitated. Was this safe? Who was this man? But the warmth inside called to her frozen bones. And something in his voice didn't feel threatening, it felt kind. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her, sealing her fate, and with it, the beginning of a story she never expected. Maya stood awkwardly in the grand entrance hall, dripping water onto the marble floor. She had never seen anything like this. A chandelier sparkled above her, walls were lined with expensive art, and a staircase curved gracefully up to a second floor. Everything smelled clean, like vanilla and cedarwood. She hugged the food bag closer to her chest, unsure what to do next. The man walked ahead without looking back. "There's a towel on the bench. Dry off, then follow me." She stared at his back as he disappeared around the corner. Was this some sort of test? Or a trap? But a towel sounded good right now. She spotted the fluffy white towel and rubbed it against her wet hair and face. Her clothes were still soaked, but at least she wasn't dripping. She followed the sound of his footsteps into a living room bigger than her entire apartment. A fireplace crackled gently. The man sat on a leather couch, legs crossed, reading something on his tablet. He pointed to a seat across from him without lifting his eyes. Maya sat slowly, clutching the food. She finally worked up the courage to speak. "I'm sorry, sir, I should go. I didn't mean to." "What's your name?" She blinked. "Maya. Maya Brooks." He nodded. "I'm Damien Cross." She recognized the name. Damien Cross, billionaire tech investor. She'd seen his face in magazines at the grocery store checkout. Why was he talking to her like this? "I want to ask you something, Maya," he said, finally looking up at her. Her heartbeat quickened. "Would you stay here? For a while?" Maya froze, eyes wide. Was this some kind of joke? "Stay? Why?" Damien smiled faintly. "Because I think your life is about to change. If you let it." Maya couldn't believe her ears. Stay here? In this mansion? With a man she just met? Her instincts told her to leave immediately. Nothing in life came free, especially not from billionaires. She gripped the delivery bag tighter, her knuckles turning white. "Sir, I don't understand. I just came to drop off food. I'm not looking for a job or anything else." Damien raised an eyebrow, amused by her reaction. "I'm not asking anything inappropriate, if that's what you're thinking. I saw something in you, Maya. You remind me of someone I knew once, someone strong and very lost." Maya didn't know what to say. Her stomach twisted. All she wanted was to finish her shift, go home and collapse into bed. But now, this strange rich man was talking in riddles and making offers that sounded too good or too weird to be true. She glanced at the fire, at the warmth, at the comfort. Then she thought of her tiny apartment with no heating, the leaky roof, and the neighbor who always yelled through the walls. "What do you want me to stay for?" she asked cautiously. He leaned forward, folding his hands. "Just stay here for 1 week. Rest, eat well, no work, no deliveries. I'll pay you $5,000, no strings attached." Maya's jaw dropped. $5,000? For doing nothing? "But why?" she asked again. Because sometimes people need a break before they break, Damien said simply, and you look like you're one shift away from falling apart. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one had ever noticed her pain, let alone offered her relief. You don't have to decide now, Damien added. You can stay the night, then decide in the morning. Maya sat back slowly, heart pounding. Everything about this was strange, but strangely tempting. Maya followed Damien's housekeeper, a quiet older woman named Gloria, through the endless hallways of the mansion. Her soaked clothes stuck to her skin, and her shoes squeaked with every step. Gloria led her to a guest bedroom that looked like something from a royal hotel. King-sized bed, silk sheets, a chandelier above, and a balcony overlooking the garden. There's a fresh change of clothes in the wardrobe, Gloria said politely, and a warm bath already running for you. Mr. Cross said you might need it. Maya blinked. A bath? Clothes? She hadn't even agreed to stay yet, but it seemed they had already made up their minds. Part of her wanted to scream that she didn't belong here. The other part was already halfway to the bathtub. She entered the bathroom and gasped. The tub was huge, with rose petals floating on the surface and steam rising gently. She peeled off her wet clothes and stepped in, the hot water wrapping around her like a hug she hadn't felt in years. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them away. After her bath, she changed into the soft clothes in the wardrobe, silk pajamas, fluffy slippers, and a thick robe. It felt unreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life. Later, she sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone. Her inbox was full of overdue bills and messages from work. Her boss had sent a one-word text, late, typical. A knock came at the door. Gloria entered with a tray of warm soup, bread, and tea. From Mr. Cross. He said you probably didn't eat. Maya took the tray with shaky hands. She hadn't. As she ate in silence, a thought crept into her mind, quiet and dangerous. What if I said yes, just 1 week? What could possibly go wrong? Morning sunlight poured through the long curtains as birds chirped softly outside. Maya woke up in the softest bed she'd ever slept in. For a second, she forgot where she was. No noise from the street, no sirens, no neighbor's baby crying. Just peace. Then it hit her. Damien Cross's mansion. She sat up slowly, memories of the night before washing over her. The offer, the bath, the soup, the kindness she still couldn't understand. A gentle knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, her voice still groggy. Gloria stepped in with a polite smile. "Mr. Cross is in the sunroom. He asked if you'd join him for breakfast." Maya hesitated, then nodded. She got dressed quickly in a simple but elegant dress that had been left in the wardrobe, along with clean shoes that actually fit. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the reflection. For once, she didn't look exhausted. She followed Gloria down the hallway until they reached the sunroom, a bright space filled with plants, glass walls, and a long table where Damien sat sipping coffee. "Good morning," he said without looking up from his tablet. "Sleep well?" Maya sat across from him, eyeing the table filled with croissants, fruit, and eggs, like a five-star buffet. "Better than I have in years," she admitted. He looked up. "Have you decided?" She swallowed, her hands resting on her lap. "I'll stay, just for the week?" Damien smiled, pleased. "Good, then let's call it day one." Maya picked up a croissant, her fingers trembling slightly. She still didn't know why he was doing this, or what he truly wanted. But something deep inside whispered that this one decision might change everything. And there was no turning back now. Maya finished her breakfast slowly, still unsure if she was dreaming. Damien barely spoke as he read through his tablet, only glancing up now and then. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. In her world, silence usually meant tension. Here, it felt intentional. After a few minutes, Damien set his tablet down and looked at her directly. "There are a few things you should know while you're here, Maya." She straightened in her chair. "Here it comes." "First, you are not a prisoner," he said. "If at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, you're free to do so. No one will stop you." Maya nodded slowly. "Second, no one in this house will treat you like a guest or a servant. You're simply here, to rest, to breathe. You don't owe me anything." That part confused her the most. Why would a man like him invite a complete stranger into his home and not want something in return? "And third," he continued, I'd like you to have dinner with me each evening. You don't have to talk much, just show up." Maya narrowed her eyes slightly. "Dinner? Why?" He shrugged lightly. "Company, that's all." She studied his face, trying to read between the lines. Damien wasn't flirtatious. He wasn't charming in the way rich men in movies were. He was calm, quiet, and strangely observant. But he didn't feel dangerous. "Okay," she said after a moment. "I can do dinner." "Good," he said. "You'll find books in the library, a garden outside, and a piano room. Explore, relax, no one will bother you." With that, he stood up, gave her a polite nod, and walked out, leaving her alone. Maya sat in silence, the truth sinking in. She had just agreed to live in a mansion, eat with a billionaire, and do nothing for a week. And somehow, she still had no idea why. Maya spent the rest of the morning exploring the mansion, walking through room after room that felt like pages from a luxury lifestyle magazine. There were oil paintings on the walls, velvet armchairs, gold-trimmed curtains, and quiet corners filled with old books. Everything looked untouched, like no one actually lived here. She passed by a grand piano in a room that smelled like lemon polish. Another hallway opened into a private theater. Then a garden, with roses that looked like they'd been hand-painted. But even with all the beauty, something about the mansion felt strange. It was too quiet. There were no voices, no footsteps, no music, only her own breathing and the soft creak of the floor beneath her. Occasionally, she'd see Gloria moving silently from one room to another, but she never spoke, unless Maya did first. Maya walked past a closed wooden door at the end of a hallway. Unlike the others, this one wasn't polished or elegant. It was plain, almost out of place. She reached out to touch the doorknob, curious. "That room's locked?" Gloria's voice startled her from behind. Maya turned quickly. "Oh, what's in there?" Gloria paused. "That room isn't used anymore. Mr. Cross prefers it stay closed." Her answer was simple, but her tone made Maya's skin prickle. "Okay," Maya said slowly. She backed away from the door. That afternoon, she sat outside in the garden, soaking up the sun and thinking. The air smelled like fresh roses, but her mind couldn't shake the locked door and the man who lived here. Damien Cross was kind, yes, generous, but something about him and this house felt like a puzzle. And Maya had a feeling she'd stepped into the middle of a story she didn't fully understand yet. Evening came faster than Maya expected. A soft knock on her door reminded her of the agreement. Dinner every night. She changed into a simple black dress that had been neatly placed on her bed, along with a note in clean handwriting. "Dinner is served at 7 p.m. DC." She found her way to the dining room, following the smell of roasted chicken and herbs. The room itself looked like it belonged in a palace. Long table, polished wood, candles flickering at the center. But only 2 seats were set. Damien was already there, wearing a charcoal grey shirt, sleeves rolled slightly at the wrist. He stood when she entered. "You made it," he said with a small nod. "I said I would," Maya replied, pulling out her chair. Dinner was quiet at first. The sound of silverware filled the silence as they both ate. The food was incredible, better than anything she'd ever tasted. Creamy mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables with a hint of garlic, and perfectly seasoned chicken. "You look like you're starting to settle in," Damien said after a few bites. "I'm still trying to figure out if I'm being pranked," she said honestly. He smiled faintly. "You're not." "Then why me? Why pick me out of all people?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on his plate, then finally lifted to hers. "Because sometimes the world crushes the wrong people. I just want to give one of them a break." "That's it?" "For now." Maya leaned back in her chair, unsure if that answer satisfied her or made her more curious. After dinner, he walked her to the hallway, stopping just before the stairs. "Thank you for the company, Maya." She paused. "You're welcome, Damien." As she walked away, his words echoed in her mind. For now, something told her there was more to this than kindness. Much more. The next morning, Maya woke up earlier than usual. Sunlight peeked through the curtains, birds chirped outside, but her mind was already racing. Damien's words from the night before haunted her. Because sometimes the world crushes the wrong people. What had he meant? And why did he say, "for now," like something was coming? She dressed quickly and headed out to explore more of the mansion. This time she moved slower, paying attention to the small things. Scratches on the wood floors, faint marks on the walls, and the way some doors had locks while others didn't. She found herself, once again, near the plain wooden door at the end of the east wing, the one Gloria had warned her about. It was still locked. But Maya was sure she had heard something behind it, a faint noise, like soft humming or whispering. She leaned closer, holding her breath. Silence. Just as she was about to walk away, a cold breeze brushed her arm, even though there were no open windows nearby. She spun around, but no one was there. Maya, Gloria's voice called from behind. She jumped, placing a hand over her chest. Gloria appeared at the corner of the hallway, holding a small basket of folded towels. I was just walking around, Maya said quickly. Gloria nodded slowly, her eyes flicking toward the closed door. That wing's always been colder than the rest. Best not to linger too long. Before Maya could ask what she meant, Gloria turned and walked off. That evening at dinner, Damien noticed her quiet mood. Something on your mind? He asked gently. Maya hesitated. What's in the locked room? His fork paused mid-air. That's not something you need to worry about, he said softly. But Maya could see it in his eyes. It was something he didn't want her to know. The next day, Maya tried to distract herself. She spent the morning in the library, flipping through novels and sipping tea by the fireplace. She even found a sketch pad and drew for the first time in years. But nothing could erase the feeling that something in this house wasn't quite right. Especially that door. She kept remembering Damien's face when she asked about it, how his calm expression cracked, just for a second. That afternoon, curiosity got the better of her. She walked slowly down the east hallway, heart thudding louder with every step. She stopped in front of the door and listened again. Nothing. But now she noticed something new. Tiny scratch marks near the base, as if someone, or something, had tried to claw their way out. Maya knelt and touched the floor. The air was cooler, much cooler. She reached for the doorknob. Stop. The voice was so sudden and firm that she jumped back. Damien stood at the end of the hallway, his face unreadable. You shouldn't be here, he said, walking toward her. His tone was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I wasn't going to open it, Maya lied quickly. I was just looking. Damien didn't answer at first. He placed a hand on the door, as if feeling something only he could understand. Some doors, Maya, are locked for good reason. What's behind it? He looked at her, really looked. A mistake, one that still breathes. Maya stepped back, stunned. What did that even mean? Damien took a deep breath. I won't force you to stay, but if you want to remain here, you must promise me one thing. What? Don't go near this door again. Maya swallowed hard. Okay, I promise. But she wasn't sure she could keep it, not when every part of her wanted to know what mistake still breathes behind a locked door in a billionaire's mansion. Maya stayed away from the east wing for the next 2 days, just as Damien asked. But that didn't stop her thoughts from going back there. Every quiet moment, every creak in the hall, every flickering light made her wonder what lived behind that door. Still, she tried to keep her promise. She spent her days in the garden, walking through the library, and occasionally catching Damien in conversation. He wasn't home much during the day. Gloria mentioned he worked from a private office in the West Wing, though Maya had never seen it. That evening, as she sat in her room journaling, she decided to look through the desk drawer to find a pen. She opened the top drawer and paused. There, hidden beneath a blank notepad, was a photograph. Maya pulled it out slowly. It was old, black and white. A woman stood in the photo, young, smiling softly. She had long, dark hair and a beauty that felt haunting. Beside her was Damien, a much younger Damien, with softer eyes and a rare open smile. Maya stared at the picture. She had never seen Damien smile like that. On the back, written in neat cursive, were 2 words. Elena Cross. His wife? His sister? Maya didn't know, but something about the photo gave her chills. There was something hollow behind that woman's smile, like she was hiding pain, or maybe warning the person who found her picture. She placed the photo back carefully and closed the drawer. Later at dinner, Maya looked at Damien differently. She wanted to ask about the woman, but didn't. Instead, she asked, "Did you ever love someone?" Damien paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Once," he said. Then he said nothing else. And Maya felt the silence grow heavy between them. The next morning, Maya wandered into the back garden, trying to clear her thoughts. The sky was overcast and the air felt thick, as though the mansion itself held its breath. She found a stone bench under a tall oak tree and sat down, resting her hands in her lap. She couldn't stop thinking about the photo. Elena Cross, whoever she was, she had meant something big, and maybe that locked door had everything to do with her. As she sat lost in thought, an older man pushing a wheelbarrow filled with gardening tools appeared from behind the hedges. He wore muddy boots, a brown cap, and moved with the tired steps of someone who'd seen too much. "Morning, miss," he said with a nod. Maya smiled politely. "Good morning. You must be the new girl," he added, "the one Mr. Cross let stay." Maya's smile faded slightly. The new girl? Did that mean there had been others? "You've worked here long?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Long enough," the man replied, kneeling to clip the hedge. "Been tending these gardens since before Mr. Cross stopped smiling." Maya tilted her head. Before he stopped? The gardener looked up at her, eyes sharp despite his age. "This house swallows people, miss. They come in bright, then leave quiet. Or don't leave at all." Maya felt her stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" He shook his head, just saying, "Be careful, Damien's a good man, but not all wounds stay in the past. Some bleed through the walls." With that, he stood and pushed the wheelbarrow away, leaving Maya sitting there, colder than before. She stared back at the mansion, the walls suddenly feeling taller, heavier, and far more dangerous. The gardener's words echoed in her mind. Some wounds bleed through the walls. That night, the air in the dining room felt heavier than usual. Maya sat across from Damien as always, but there was a tension between them she couldn't name. She kept glancing at him, wondering if he noticed the way her mind had drifted from polite conversation to whispered warnings and old photographs. He finally broke the silence. "You seem distracted tonight." Maya hesitated. "I spoke to your gardener today." "Ah, Harold, loyal but too fond of ghost stories." "Are they stories?" she asked, eyes fixed on him. Damien's expression didn't change, but his fingers paused, gently tapping the edge of his wine glass. "Some people see shadows where there are none. And some shadows are just waiting to be seen," Maya replied. The two stared at each other for a moment. Damien's eyes, cool and unreadable, locked with hers. Then without a word he stood. "Dinner's over." He left the room without another glance, leaving Maya confused and uneasy. She returned to her room, heart pounding. Was she getting too close to something? Was she in danger? Later that night, the silence was broken. A loud thud echoed from the east wing. Maya sat up in bed, frozen. Another thud. Then a dragging sound, slow, heavy. She crept to her door and opened it just enough to peek into the hallway. Nothing. But the sounds continued, distant but distinct, coming from behind that locked door. Her curiosity burned. Against her better judgment, Maya slipped into the hallway, barefoot and quiet. The floor was cold beneath her feet. She crept toward the east wing until she reached the door. This time, the humming returned. Soft, sad, like someone singing a lullaby. Her hand inched toward the knob. Then a voice whispered sharply from the shadows. "I told you never to come here at night." She turned, startled. Damien stood behind her, and he wasn't calm anymore. Maya froze, her hand inches from the doorknob. Damien stood just feet away, his face shadowed in the dim hallway light. Gone was the collected, polished man she had grown used to. His jaw was tight, his eyes darker, colder. I heard something," Maya stammered, backing away from the door. There was a sound, like someone crying. Damien stepped closer. His voice was low, firm. "This part of the house is off limits. That was the one rule I gave you." "Oh, I didn't open the door," she whispered. "But you were going to." Maya's eyes met his, full of confusion and fear. "Why won't you just tell me what's behind it?" Damien stared at the door for a long time before answering. "Because some truths don't free people, Maya. Some truths trap them." She wanted to push more, but the look in his eyes stopped her. It wasn't anger, it was pain, deep, old pain. Damien sighed and ran a hand through his hair. his calm slowly returning. "Go back to bed, please." His voice had softened again, but there was no warmth in it, just exhaustion. Maya nodded and turned away, her feet heavy as she walked back down the hall, but her mind raced. That humming, she hadn't imagined it, and the dragging sound. Something or someone was in there. Back in her room, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring into the dark. She had broken the rule, and now everything between her and Damien had changed. One thing was clear: he was hiding more than a memory. He was hiding a person, or something that used to be one. And Maya didn't know how long she could pretend she didn't hear the cries behind the locked door. The next morning, Maya awoke to a heavy silence. Not peaceful, but sharp, like the house itself was waiting for her next move. Damien was nowhere to be seen during breakfast, and Gloria simply said he'd gone to his office when Maya asked. Maya ate alone, her appetite gone. Her thoughts kept drifting to the night before, to the humming, to Damien's voice filled with fear, not anger. She needed answers. Later that afternoon, she returned to the library not to read, but to search. Something in her gut told her the truth was in this house, hidden behind more than just a locked door. She combed through old books, drawers, even picture frames. Hours passed. Just as she was about to give up, she spotted an old wooden box tucked behind a row of thick encyclopedias. Inside it, wrapped in delicate lace, was a small leather-bound journal. The name embossed on the front in fading gold letters stopped her heart. Elena Cross. With shaking hands, Maya opened it. The first pages were sweet. Entries about sunsets, piano lessons, and how Damien brought her coffee every morning. But as the pages turned, the words grew darker. "Damien thinks I'm losing my mind. The house speaks to me when he's not around. I see her in the mirror now. She smiles when I cry." Maya's eyes widened. Who was her? The final entry chilled her to the bone. "I begged him to lock the door, to keep everyone safe, but it's too late. She's not just a part of me anymore. She wants out." Maya closed the diary, her breath caught in her throat. Something had happened to Elena. Something terrible. And whatever it was still in this house. Maya couldn't sleep that night. Elena's diary sat on the table beside her bed, its pages burned into her memory. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. She lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. She wants out. Who was she? A spirit? A second personality? A ghost? Around midnight, Maya sat up, her body restless. She walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm her racing thoughts. When she looked up into the mirror, she froze. Behind her reflection, for the briefest moment, was the outline of another woman. Long dark hair, pale skin, hollow eyes, a faint smile. Maya spun around. No one was there. She whipped back to the mirror, empty again, just her own face, flushed and panicked. Her breath quickened. She backed out of the bathroom and climbed into bed, pulling the covers over herself like a child afraid of the dark. It was just my imagination, she told herself. Just stress, just fear. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. The next morning, she confronted Gloria. Who was Elena? Gloria's face paled, and her hands trembled slightly as she stirred sugar into Maya's tea. "You shouldn't ask about her," she whispered, "for your own good." "Tell me," Maya insisted. Gloria sat down across from her, looking more tired than ever. Eleanor was Damien's wife, a sweet, brilliant woman, but she changed after her miscarriage. She became cold, heard things, saw things. Damien did everything he could, but she said there was someone else inside her. Maya's mouth went dry. And then? She disappeared. One night, gone without a trace. Damien locked her room, buried the pain. But Maya had read the truth. Eleanor hadn't vanished. She'd been locked away. And whatever was inside her might still be waiting. Maya's world had shifted. Every hallway now felt haunted, every creak in the floor a whisper from the past. Elena's diary sat in her pocket like a ticking clock. There was no more pretending this was just a luxury stay. She was in the middle of something real, something dangerous. She wandered into the music room that afternoon, drawn by the sound of keys being played gently, but when she entered, the piano was silent and empty. No one! But the scent of lavender hung in the air. light and floral, the same scent that clung to the diary's pages. She walked to the piano and lightly touched a key. A dull note echoed. Then she saw it. A hairpin, silver ornate, resting near the edge of the bench. She picked it up slowly. It was old, delicate, and covered in dust, but unmistakably feminine. Maya had seen it once before. In the photo, in Elena's hair. She gripped it tightly and turned, only to find Damien standing in the doorway watching her. His eyes dropped to the hairpin. He didn't speak. "You lied to me," Maya said quietly. Damien walked in slowly, his expression unreadable. "I protected you. You locked her away, didn't you?" He said nothing. Maya's voice cracked. "What is she, Damien?" He looked down at the piano for a long time before finally answering. "I don't know anymore." That night, Maya locked her bedroom door. She didn't know who to trust. Not Damien, not Gloria, maybe not even herself. But one thing was certain. Eleanor was still in that house. And Maya had a growing feeling that Eleanor wasn't the only one losing control. The wind howled outside the mansion that night. A storm had rolled in, lashing rain against the windows and sending branches tapping on the glass like impatient fingers. Maya couldn't sleep. She lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, the hairpin resting on the nightstand beside her like a fragile secret. At exactly 2:17 a.m., something moved. She heard soft footsteps just outside her door. Not Gloria, not Damien. These steps were lighter, slower, dragging. Maya crept out of bed and moved to the door, pressing her ear against it. Nothing. And then a whisper. "Let me out." Her blood turned to ice. She jerked back, breathing hard. The voice had been low, desperate, like it had traveled through walls to reach her. She waited a full minute before opening her door. The hallway was empty. Shaking, she walked toward the east wing again, pulled by something deeper than curiosity now, maybe connection, or instinct. She stopped at the locked door. This time, something was different. Scratches. Thin, jagged scratches ran across the wood, fresh ones. Some were deep, as if clawed with nails or something sharper. Maya reached out and ran her fingers over one. Still warm. She heard the humming again, closer now, more real than ever. A soft lullaby, the same tune she remembered from her childhood. She backed away slowly, heart pounding. Suddenly, the door handle rattled. Not just once. Over and over, like someone was trying to open it from the inside. Maya ran. She didn't stop until she was back in her room, locking the door behind her, her breath coming in short gasps. The truth was no longer hiding behind that door. It was knocking to be let out. And Maya feared she might be the one holding the key. The storm raged all through the night, but Maya barely noticed. She sat huddled on her bed, clutching the old hairpin in her hand like a weapon. The scratching, the voice, the shaking doorknob. It hadn't been her imagination. Elena, or whatever was left of her, wanted out. By morning, the storm had calmed, but Maya's thoughts hadn't. She needed answers, real ones, not half-truths, not silence, and certainly not Damien's tired warnings. She returned to the library once more, determined to find something, anything, that would explain how Elena had become what she was. She checked every shelf, flipped through old books, pulled out drawers. That's when she saw it. In the corner of the fireplace, half hidden behind charred logs and cold ash, something glinted. She reached in carefully, her fingers brushing against metal. She pulled it out. A key. Not just any key, it was old, heavy, and blackened with soot, and it matched the lock on the door in the east wing. Her heart raced. She turned it over in her palm. Someone had tried to hide it. She didn't know how long she stood there staring at it before she felt a presence behind her. "You found it, didn't you?" She turned. Damien stood in the doorway of the library, his expression unreadable. "You hid the key," Maya said, holding it up. "Why?" "Because I was afraid of what would happen if someone let her out." "So it's really Eleanor behind that door?" Maya asked. "What is she now, Damien?" Damien looked away, jaw tight. "I don't know. I don't even know if she's still fully human." "Then maybe she needs help," Maya whispered, "not a prison. Or maybe she needs to stay locked away, for everyone's sake." They stared at each other in silence. But the choice had already been made. The key was in Maya's hand now, and the door was waiting. That night, the mansion felt colder than ever. Every hallway seemed darker, every shadow stretched longer. Maya held the key in her palm, her fingers trembling. She had barely spoken a word to Damien all day. He hadn't tried to stop her. He didn't even mention the key again. But his silence said everything. He was afraid. Maya waited until after midnight. She moved through the mansion like a ghost, barefoot, careful not to make a sound. The house was sleeping. Even Gloria's room was dark. When she reached the east wing, the air shifted. Colder, thicker, like the hallway was holding its breath. She stood in front of the door, the one she had promised never to touch again. The scratches on the wood seemed even fresher now, some of them smeared with something dark. Red! Her hand shook as she lifted the key. She paused. "Are you sure?" Her mind whispered. "You open this and everything changes." But deep down, Maya already knew everything had already changed. She slid the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy click. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a room bathed in shadows. The air smelled of dust, lavender, and something older, something bitter and sad. Inside, the room was beautiful once, a four-poster bed, tall windows, soft curtains, but everything was covered in a layer of dust and time. And in the corner, sitting in a wooden rocking chair, was Elena. Her back was turned. Long dark hair fell over her shoulders. She rocked slowly, humming the same lullaby Maya had heard so many nights. Maya's heart pounded. "Elena," she whispered. The humming stopped. The rocking stopped. Elena turned her head slowly, just enough for Maya to see one thing. Her eyes were not human anymore, and she was smiling. Maya couldn't move. Elena, if that's who she still was, sat perfectly still, her head tilted slightly, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. They weren't red, they weren't black, they were empty, like twin mirrors that reflected fear. The smile on her lips didn't match the sorrow in the room. It was slow, too wide, and somehow knowing. "You're not afraid of me, are you?" Elena's voice was soft, almost childlike. Maya swallowed hard. "I don't know what you are." Elena slowly stood up, her long gown trailing the floor like mist. She took one step, then another, never breaking eye contact. Maya backed away, but she didn't run. Elena stopped just a few feet away. "You look like someone I used to know," she whispered. "Someone kind, before everything changed." "What happened to you?" Maya asked, voice shaking. Elena's smile flickered. "Damien locked the wrong part of me away. He thought he was saving the world, but sometimes the world doesn't deserve saving." Her head twitched slightly, her gaze shifting to the open door behind Maya. "He sent you, didn't he? To see if the monster is still breathing?" Maya's heart raced. "No, I came on my own." Elena laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Brave little girl." She stepped closer, too close, and reached out a hand. Maya flinched, but didn't move. Elena touched her cheek gently. "You want to help me, but you don't even know which one of me you're talking to." Suddenly, the air in the room dropped. Maya's breath came out in fog. Elena's eyes changed, and her voice, deeper now, not her own, whispered, "Run, before she wakes up." Maya turned and bolted from the room, heart hammering, slamming the door shut behind her. She dropped the key on the floor. Whatever was behind that door wasn't just Elena. It was two beings in one body. And one of them had just warned her, the other was about to wake. Maya didn't sleep. She sat by her door with her back against it, eyes wide, hands gripping the dropped key. The warning echoed in her mind over and over. Run before she wakes up. The problem was, Maya didn't know which version of Elena had spoken to her. The gentle one, the grieving one, or the thing inside her that Damien had feared all along. Morning came like a whisper through the mansion's tall windows, but there was no warmth in the sunlight. At breakfast, Damien was already seated, his face pale, the circles under his eyes darker than usual. He didn't ask her how she slept. "You opened the door," he said quietly. Maya nodded, her mouth dry. "She spoke to me, Damien." His eyes snapped to hers. "She?" Maya placed the key gently on the table between them. Elena is still there, but something else is with her, something that warned me. I think it's still trying to protect her, or me, I don't know. Damien's jaw tightened. I tried to save her, Maya. I tried everything. Priests, doctors, scientists, they all failed. I begged her to let me help, but she said the thing inside her was ancient, older than words. Then why keep her locked away instead of... Because she chose it, he interrupted sharply. She said the longer it stayed out, the more it would hurt people. That room is the only thing that's kept her from falling apart completely. Maya leaned forward, voice barely above a whisper. She's already falling apart. Damien didn't speak for a long time. Then softly he said, there was another before you. A girl who worked here. She got too close, tried to help Elena escape. What happened? Damien looked away, his voice barely audible. She never left the mansion. The silence between them stretched deep and painful. And Maya knew. She was no longer just a visitor in this house. She was part of the story now. And the story was far from over. Maya spent most of the day walking through the garden, trying to calm the storm inside her. Damien's words haunted her. Another girl had tried to help Elena and hadn't made it out. But why? What exactly had happened? What had Elena become? She couldn't ask Damien again. He was shutting down. The guilt on his face told her he was still hiding pieces of the truth. So she went to the only other person who might know more. Gloria. Maya found her folding linens in the hallway upstairs, her movements careful and slow. Gloria looked up, eyes kind but tired, as if she already knew what Maya was going to ask. You saw her, didn't you? Gloria said before Maya could even speak. Maya nodded. I opened the door. I saw both versions of her. One looked like Elena, the other, something else. Gloria let out a soft sigh and placed the linen on the table. She motioned for Maya to sit with her on a bench by the window. They stared out at the garden together for a moment before Gloria spoke. She was the light of this house once, Elena. Bright, soft, kind. But after she lost the baby, something opened in her. Something ancient. Damien didn't believe it at first. None of us did. What was it? We don't know its name. Elena called it the second soul, said it found her in her grief, promised to take away her pain if she let it in, but it didn't take the pain. It took everything else. Maya's voice trembled. Why didn't Damien send her away? Or call someone? He tried, Gloria said, but Elena begged him to keep her here. She said locking the door was the only way to stop it from spreading, and Damien, he loved her too much to let her go. So you both just left her in there, alone. Gloria's eyes filled with tears. Not alone, dear. Maya blinked. What do you mean? Gloria looked away, voice shaking. She wasn't the only one the second soul tried to take. That's why I stayed. Because once it whispered to me too. Maya stared at Gloria, stunned. Her heart pounded in her chest. The calm, steady housekeeper, the woman who moved like part of the furniture, had heard it too. You? It whispered to you? Gloria nodded slowly, her hands trembling in her lap. Years ago. After Elena changed, I was the first one who saw it happen. Her eyes, her voice. It wasn't just grief. It was possession. One night, she touched my hand and whispered things to me. Offered peace, power, promises. Said, it could make my pain disappear. What did you do? I said no, but saying no doesn't stop the voice, Maya. It lingers, like smoke in your thoughts. Is that why you stayed all these years? Gloria looked away, her voice barely audible. I stayed to protect this house from her, from it, and from people like you who come too close. Maya felt a cold weight settle on her shoulders. Everything made sense now. The quiet halls, the tension in the walls, the locked door wasn't just to keep Elena in, it was to keep the second soul from slipping into someone else. Gloria placed a wrinkled hand over Maya's. You're strong, Maya, but strength alone won't save you from this. You have to decide now what part of the story you want to play. What do you mean? Gloria's eyes filled with sadness. Every person who opens that door loses a piece of themselves. Elena lost everything. And if you stay too long, Maya, you will too. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the east wing, followed by a scream. A scream that wasn't quite human. Gloria's eyes widened. "She's awake," Gloria whispered. "She's fully awake now." Maya jumped to her feet, dread sinking into her bones. And this time, the door wouldn't stay shut. Maya ran through the halls toward the east wing, Gloria calling after her, but the sound of the scream drowned everything out. It echoed through the mansion like a storm, raw, unearthly, and angry. When she reached the hallway, she froze. The door to Elena's room was wide open. The lock was broken, the floor around the door splintered like something had burst out from the inside. The corridor beyond it was dark, unnaturally dark. The air was thick, almost hard to breathe. Maya took one shaky step forward. "Elena," she called out, her voice echoing. No answer. She stepped inside. The room looked the same, and yet different. The furniture was overturned, the curtains had been slashed, the mirror above the vanity was shattered, shards scattered like glittering teeth on the floor. But the rocking chair was empty. Suddenly she heard it again. The humming. This time it came from behind her. Maya spun around and found Elena standing at the door. Except it wasn't just Elena anymore. Her hair floated slightly around her like she was underwater. Her eyes shimmered silver, swirling like smoke. Her face was calm, but wrong. Too calm. "You opened the door," Elena said softly, walking toward her. "That means you're ready." Maya backed away. "Ready for what?" "To be the next home," Elena whispered. She reached out a hand. Maya turned and ran. Down the hallway, past the broken door, down the grand staircase 2 steps at a time. Her heart pounded. She didn't know where she was running to, only away. Then, arms grabbed her. Maya screamed, twisting. It was Damien. "Maya," he shouted. "Did she touch you?" "No," she gasped. "But she's out. Damien, she's out." He pulled her close, his voice shaking. "I think we don't have much time." Maya looked into his eyes and saw pure fear. Damien locked the door to the east wing behind them, barricading it with a heavy cabinet. His hands trembled as he shoved it into place, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cold air creeping through the walls. Maya sat on the stairs, her chest heaving. Elena had spoken to her. No, something inside Elena had spoken. That voice wasn't human, and it had chosen her. "It wants me," she said quietly. Damien turned to her slowly. "Yes, I was afraid of that. You knew this would happen. I hoped it wouldn't. But the second soul, it doesn't stay locked forever. It waits, it watches, and when it finds someone it connects to, it moves on," Maya finished, her voice flat. Damien nodded. "Eleanor's will held it back for years, but she's tired now. We both are. The moment you opened the door, it shifted. You gave it something new to cling to." Maya stared at him, the truth sinking in like ice. "You used me as bait." Damien flinched. "I hoped you'd walk away before it reached you, but I also knew if anyone could resist it, it would be you. You're not like the others. You ask questions. You don't run from the dark." Maya stood, fury bubbling inside her. "You brought me here to trap it in me, didn't you?" "No. I brought you here because you still have a choice. You can leave, right now. And maybe it will go dormant again." She shook her head, stepping back. "And what happens to Elena?" Damien's face fell. "She won't survive this time. If it fully takes over, she's gone forever." Maya's hands clenched. There had to be another way. And then the lights flickered. The chandeliers above them swayed slightly. A low humming filled the hall. Not Elena's. Maya's. Her own voice humming, without her mouth moving. She covered her lips in horror. Damien's face turned pale. "It's already inside you." Maya could feel it now, a cold, creeping sensation moving beneath her skin, whispering softly in her thoughts. Her head spun, her vision blurred. It felt like someone else was trying to push their way into her mind. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No." Damien moved toward her cautiously. "Maya, listen to me. You have to fight it." She stumbled back, leaning against the stair railing. "How do I fight something I can't even see?" By holding on, he urged. Hold on to who you are. She shut her eyes, trying desperately to hold back the flood of whispers that filled her head. Promises of peace, freedom from pain, an end to all her suffering. Just let go, the voice whispered softly. Let me carry you. You don't have to fight anymore. For a moment, she almost believed it. The voice was gentle, kind, like a mother's lullaby soothing a frightened child. Then she remembered Elena. The hollow eyes, the empty smile, the woman who had lost everything, her memories, her joy, her humanity. Maya opened her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, I won't let you take me. The air in the room grew colder, darker, heavier. Suddenly, Elena appeared at the top of the staircase. She stared down at Maya, her silver eyes glowing softly. It's not a choice, Elena said, her voice blending with the whispers inside Maya's mind. It's destiny. Mine ends here. Yours begins. No, Maya screamed, holding her head. Get out of me. Damien stepped forward, reaching for Maya's hand. Hold on, don't give in. Maya squeezed his hand, fighting the darkness swirling inside her. She could feel it slipping, losing its grip. Then Elena screamed, a haunting, unearthly sound. The room shook violently, and suddenly Maya understood. The second soul could only have one host at a time. To free Elena, she had to let it in completely, or find another way to trap it forever. Maya stood frozen between two impossible choices. Damien's hand was warm and steady, anchoring her to reality, but Eleanor's cries pierced through her heart. The second soul was pulling at her mind, desperate, angry, hungry, demanding to be let in. Eleanor collapsed on the stairs, her silver eyes dimming, the creature inside her losing strength as Maya resisted. Damien's voice was strained. Maya, it's weak now. If you resist, maybe we can trap it again. But Maya looked at Eleanor's fragile form, broken by years of darkness. Could she live with herself if she walked away, leaving Eleanor forever imprisoned? She took a deep breath and pulled her hand from Damien's. There's another way, she whispered. Damien's eyes widened, understanding dawning. Maya, don't. You'll never be the same. I'm not leaving Eleanor trapped forever. If I let it in, it'll leave her. She'll finally be free. Damien shook his head desperately. You can't sacrifice yourself. Maya smiled weakly. I won't let it control me, not like it controlled Elena. Trust me. Before Damien could argue, Maya stepped toward Elena, kneeling beside her. Elena's gaze met Maya's, and for the first time Maya saw gratitude beneath the pain. Maya took Elena's hands gently. It's okay. Let go. Eleanor's silver eyes faded to dark brown. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered softly, I'm sorry. And just like that, the room went silent. Elena slumped, unconscious but breathing freely. But Maya felt a surge within her, cold and powerful, slipping through her veins, her thoughts shifting like shadows. Damien rushed to her side, catching Maya as she nearly collapsed. Maya's eyes flickered silver for a moment, then returned to normal. She whispered hoarsely, her voice trembling but determined. It's inside me now, but I won't let it win. Damien held her tightly, his voice shaking. I won't let you fight alone. And in that moment, Maya knew. The final battle was no longer in Elena's room. It was now within her own soul. Days passed quietly in the mansion, each hour a fragile victory for Maya. Elena, now free from the second soul's grasp, slowly regained her strength. Gloria watched over her, tending to her carefully, relieved but saddened by the cost of her freedom. But Maya fought silently, trapped in a constant struggle with the voice whispering inside her. It was relentless, seductive, patient, promising power, promising peace. She barely slept, barely ate, but never stopped fighting. Damien rarely left her side, helping anchor her to reality whenever she began slipping into darkness. His presence became her lifeline, his quiet strength a shield against the whispers that grew louder each night. On the third evening, Maya sat alone in the garden, the soft breeze brushing against her skin. The voice was clearer than ever, almost tangible beside her. You're strong, Maya, it whispered soothingly, but how long can you resist? Give in. Let me heal your pain. She closed her eyes tightly. No. Suddenly she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. Elena stood behind her, eyes clear, her face calm. Maya! Elena said softly, kneeling beside her. "You freed me. You took my burden. But I've learned something important. It feeds on fear and loneliness. The only way to defeat it is to face the very thing it promises to erase. Your own pain." Maya met Elena's eyes. "But how?" "By not hiding from it," Elena replied gently. "Accept your past. Accept yourself. Once you stop running, the voice loses power." Maya took a deep breath, tears filling her eyes. She nodded slowly. That night, she returned to the locked room alone. Standing in front of the shattered mirror, she faced her reflection, the reflection twisted by the creature inside her. She spoke quietly, firmly. "I won't run from my pain anymore, and I don't need your lies." In the silence that followed, the whispers faded to a single, desperate plea. "Don't abandon me." Then, silence filled her mind. And for the first time in weeks, Maya felt something she thought she'd never feel again. Peace. Weeks later, sunlight poured gently through the mansion's windows, filling rooms that once held darkness. The heaviness was gone, replaced by calm. Elena had recovered fully, smiling now, finally at peace with herself. Gloria's quiet laughter filled the kitchen, and even Damien's eyes had softened, the weight he'd carried lifted at last. But no one had changed more than Maya. She stood at the mansion gates, suitcase by her side, ready to leave. Damien walked up to her slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Are you sure you have to go?" he asked gently. Maya smiled softly. "I have to. The house isn't my home. It was my lesson. But it taught me how strong I really am." Damien nodded, understanding. "You gave us our lives back. I'll never forget that." She reached out and hugged him tightly, whispering, "Neither will I." As Maya walked down the driveway toward her new life, she felt lighter than she ever had. The whispers were gone, the darkness defeated. She had faced her pain, her fears, and had come out stronger. For the first time, Maya Brooks was truly free. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit the like button, comment your favorite part, and subscribe for more amazing stories. Your support helps us keep bringing you new adventures every week. Thanks for watching.